Hello and welcome to The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up within the hour. The Vatican releases funeral program for the late Pope Francis, who died on Easter Monday. Cardinals participating in the conclave arrive at the Vatican and enter into conclave. Plus, Harvard University sues the Trump administration for freezing federal grants, compliance with the Trump administration's demands. Let's begin The World Today. The remains of the late Pope Francis has been moved to St. Peter's Basilica, where it will lie in state from today. And then from tomorrow, allow Catholic faithful to catch one last glimpse of the pontiff before the funeral on Saturday. Pope Francis will be buried at St. Mary Major Basilica on his request. In an interview with the Times newspaper, the Basilica's Master of Ceremonies and Head of Liturgy, Father Ivan Recupero, said Pope Francis has been here 125 times since becoming Pope and always brings flowers. The church was founded in 432, a year after the Council of Ephesus declared Mary to be the Mother of God. It's around 4 kilometers from the Vatican. The late pontiff's decision breaks with tradition, as he set out in his testament that he wished to have a simple underground burial. Francis will be the first pope since Leo the 8th, who died in 1903, to be buried outside the Vatican. There is a growing list of world leaders who have indicated their willingness and intention to be there at the Pope's funeral on Saturday. Just learning that Prince William will be attending on behalf of King Charles, who had attended the former Pope's funeral on behalf of Queen Elizabeth II back in 2005. The U.S. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Spain's King Felipe VI and Queen Letizia will be attending. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, Polish President Andrzej Duda, the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and the Argentinian President Javier Milei, as well as the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The right to confirming the death and placement of the Pope's body in the coffin took place in the evening of Monday, April 21, in the ground floor chapel of the Casa Santa Marta. The official declaration of death was read aloud. The act was validated by Cardinal Kevin Farrell, Carmelengo of the Holy Roman Church. The ceremony lasted just an hour. Seals were also placed on the papal apartment on the 3rd floor of the Apostolic Palace and on the apartments on the 2nd floor of Casa Santa Marta, where the Pope had resided. Well, this morning, the first general congregation of cardinals took place, during which a potential date of the funeral was announced. Well, people around the world have been mourning the death of Pope Francis. For those in Argentina, the home place of Pope Francis, thousands gathered at the San Jose de Flores Basilica in Buenos Aires, where a young Jorge Mario Bergoglio once discovered his vocation. A mass is being held there, led by Archbishop Jorge Garcia Cueva. It's brought together a multitude of faithful in the very church where the future pontiff first felt called to serve God. During his homily, Archbishop Garcia remembered Pope Francis as the father of all and urged Argentinians to pursue national reconciliation in tribute to his memory. The Mass in Flores was just one of many commemorative ceremonies held across Argentina to honor the first Latin American Pope. The government has declared 7 days of mourning, and President Javier Milei has suspended his schedule to travel to Rome and attend a funeral. Olivier Ribadeau, Dumas, rector and archpriest of the Notre Dame de Paris, paid tribute to Pope Francis, the Pope Francis he referred to following his passing on Monday. On Pope Francis' enduring legacy, Dumas declared that he is the Pope of the poor, whether they be elderly, whose culture he spoke of as a waste, or the unborn or migrants. He says, let's not forget that his first trip to Italy was to Lampedusa to help the poorest of the poor. Dumas described the late Pope as a force for good and optimism, who continuously called for peace and a better world. He said this man of hope died the day after we celebrated Christ's victory over death. This is undoubtedly one of the most beautiful days to die. Notre Dame will continue to honor Pope Francis with a series of masses over the next 24 hours, including a morning mass today. A solemn mass led by the Archbishop of Paris will follow in the coming days, with a date and time yet to be announced. Adding his voice to tributes made to Pope Francis, says the UN Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez, who has extended his deep condolences to Catholics and all those around the world inspired by the extraordinary life and example of His Holiness Pope Francis. Speaking to reporters on Monday, Mr. Gutierrez described the Pope as a messenger of peace.
I want to extend my deepest condolences to Catholics and all those around the world inspired by the extraordinary life and example of His Holiness Pope Francis. Pope Francis was a messenger of hope, humility, and humanity. He was a transcendent voice for peace, human dignity, and social justice. He leaves behind a legacy of faith, service, and compassion for all, especially those on the margins of life or trapped by the horrors of conflict. Pope Francis was a man of faith for all faiths, working with people of all beliefs and backgrounds to light a path forward. Through the years, we at United Nations were greatly inspired by his commitment to the goals and ideals of our organization, a message I was honored to convey in my meetings with him as Secretary General. Pope Francis also understood that protecting our common home is at heart a deeply moral mission, a responsibility that belongs to every person. Many of us find great meaning in his final Easter message delivered just yesterday. He appealed for us not to yield, as he called it, to the logic of fear. Instead, he urged the world to invest in what he referred to as the weapons of peace, to help the most vulnerable, to fight hunger, to advance development. Our divided and discordant world will be a much better place if we follow his example of unity and mutual understanding in our own actions.
A solemn crowd gathered at New York City's St. Patrick's Cathedral on Monday to mourn the passing of Pope Francis and honor his legacy. Worshippers prayed inside the cathedral, where portraits of the late pontiff and memorabilia preserved from his 2015 visit to New York can be seen placed on display at the altar. During his visit to New York in September 2015, Pope Francis led a prayer service at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Following his passing, the cathedral honored his memory with a special mass.
I think the first thing that I thought was, what am I going to do? What am I going to do without the Pope? I'm 27 now, and he is the Pope that I have grown up with as I've grown into being a Christian, into being a Catholic, and his guidance has guided me, has made me a better woman, a better Christian, and I thought, what am I going to do? But of course, the next Pope will have those shoes to fill, and I will follow that Pope as well. And I place my faith in God that we will elect a Pope that really exemplifies what the Lord calls for us.
Joining me now is Professor, Graduate Program of the Program and also Program Director of Journalism and Mass Communications in Murray State University, Sister Bellamine Izuma. Sister Bellamine joins us from Kentucky in the United States. Sister Bellamine, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And interesting times that we're in, aren't we? Just coming off of the celebration of Easter, and then hearing this that has happened. Pope Francis dying on Easter Monday. How did you feel hearing news of the Pope's death?
I was deeply saddened, actually, even though we know that he's been sick for a while. His health has been failing, but it was still a very sad news, because he is the leader of the Catholic Church and the father, the pontiff. So the death was received with great sadness.
And what are the chances that, he could have listened to his doctors? Because we're learning that, they advised him to stay in bed on Sunday. But the Pope, being the Pope, a lover of the people, a man of humility, a man of service, decided, he was going to take this last chance to greet the people, to be there, offer some hope to those who haven't seen him for weeks and who are concerned about his health. Do you think maybe he could have been with us today, still offering another Mass, if he had just listened to his doctors on Sunday?
Oh, certainly not. Actually, when it comes to a matter of life and death, God gives life and he gives death. He knows when someone's life on earth is finished. And I firmly believe that. And look at it another way. If we believe that God determines when life ends, and the Pope died the next day and listened to the doctors and never had that chance to minister to people, because he was a lover of people. I mean, that would have been a different story. So I support, his tenacity, and I support his love for people. He used his last breath and last energy to do what he loved to do most, that is being among the people, preaching the gospel. First of all, he was a priest, and fundamentally a priest and a minister of the people, a shepherd of people, a leader of the people. So he really fought a good fight and fought it to the end. And he used his last strength and the last breath to preach the gospel. And that is remarkable.
Yes, and we see from the Pope's life, how he, well, I say, graduated to this position of pontiff. It's always been a life of service. I mean, he decided from a young age he was going to serve God, and then became a priest, and then eventually became a bishop, I think, in Argentina, a place that, at this time, they're just forlorn and, really distressed by, the Pope's death. They're taking this very personally. The president has declared 7 days of national mourning, and the people are holding masses in the Pope's honor. You really wonder, how a person just decides this is how he wants to serve God. This is how he wants to serve God and serve humanity. Talk to us about, how, the circumstances around him helped him make this decision to go ahead and, fill in the gap of being a leader of humanity.
Yesterday when the news broke, and of course I told you it was a sad news, very sad news, but I just started reading about him, and he had a very interesting life, from the young age. And there are certain things that he did, when you see a pope, oftentimes people don't see see it as a person, first of all. He actually worked in a bar. So he was a bartender, something like that. And then, worked at a restaurant, and he's one of, I think, 5 siblings. And I think his sister is still alive. When he made that decision to become a priest, and I'm pretty sure he never imagined that he will eventually be the leader of the Catholic Church, the leader of 1.3 billion Catholics all over the world. And from his life, I know that he embraced that vocation as a servant. He never really wanted to be, I guess, the leader or, to sit in that position. And his decision to take St. Francis of Assisi as his patron saint also attests to this, the life of service, the life of humility, the life of loving people, and the life of preaching the gospel more indeed than in words. Because one of the famous quotes that's attributed to St. Francis is, preach the gospel and use the words only when necessary. And when we look at his life, both when he was in Argentina and even, during his papacy, you see that he also always loved people, irrespective of who you are and what you are.
Yes, he did. He did love people, didn't he? And he showed it. It really showed to the very time, that he passed. And I understand, that, very quickly the funeral arrangements have been made. I suppose that this does kick in, doesn't it? For the Vatican, there is already, a program in place, even for any pope who, anyone who becomes pope. There is a program for your very last day on this earth, the events that happen after. Talk to us about, what we can expect between now and Saturday, which we know is the funeral day itself.
Yes, I'm glad you said about arrangements, about his death. Actually, yesterday I was reading the final statement of Francis, as it is titled. That was the instructions he gave as to where he would like his body to be entombed or to be buried. And I was really fascinated and actually very happy that he chose a chapel that is devoted to Our Lady. I think Basilica of St. Mary Major in Italy, in the Vatican area. And that is because of his devotion to our Blessed Mother Mary. And then from now on, as you asked, what we can expect is, of course, the funeral that is coming up, on Saturday. And after that, there will be a conclave, where the cardinals will come together and meet in a secret place at the Sistine Chapel to elect a new pope. And all the cardinals under the age of 80 will, be qualified to partake in this activity. And they have to have 2/3 of the vote in order to have a new pope elected. And of course, we know about the smoke, whether it is black or white. Yeah. Black smoke showing that we do not have a pope yet. And of course, with white smoke that we know there is, a pope. And then after the election, there will also be like the first blessing, just presenting the new pope to us, and the new pope giving the new blessing, or the first blessing to the entire world. But before then, like right now, there is something called, sede vacante, meaning a vacant seat, because the seat of the Holy Pontiff is no longer there. It's empty right now. The seat is there, but, there's no one there. So the College of Cardinals will actually be holding the fort until the new Pope is elected.
Yes, and let's talk a bit more about the cardinals that are coming. We already understand that they have already been locked into that room where they will be participating in the election of a new pope. We have one candidate from Nigeria, Cardinal Opaleke. Is the only one eligible to vote from Nigeria. And, people have been asking the question, what are the chances that an African could become the next pope?
I think that is left for the Holy Spirit to determine. It can be anyone. It can be anyone, but I guess the Holy Spirit will decide that.
Indeed, the Holy Spirit will decide that. So let's, talk about some of the things that characterized Pope Francis' life while he walked this earth with us. Some of the controversies surrounding him, and I think that we really cannot mention a few of them. One of them is the issue of contraceptives. He allowed for Catholic women, and also the blessing for members, and I would say of the alphabet community. The misconception that the Pope actually recognized the community and accepted them and sort of gave them the recognition that the rest of the world, even the church here in Nigeria, I think, were very amazed at.
Yes. Well, starting with, the alphabet community, like you put it, there is a controversy because I believe that some people misunderstood what the Pope said. There is no time that the Pope asked the Catholic Church to extend the sacrament of matrimony to homosexuals. In fact, there is a very famous quote. I believe he gave that quote to the Reuters in 2013. He said, if a person is gay and seeks God and has goodwill, who am I to judge them? And when you look at that statement, that embodies who Pope Francis is or was, because he's looking at them as individuals. He's looking at them as persons. He's looking at them as God's creatures. He is not looking at their lifestyle. And the blessing that he encourages the priest to extend to them is the blessing because every human person is made in the image and likeness of God. That is what we believe. So if the person is made in image and likeness of God, irrespective of what they choose, and if, like Pope Francis said, if they have goodwill and they seek God, give them blessing. Now, coming to the contraception or the contraceptives, I don't think he supported or approves of it. However, I looked at his statement. He said that the Catholic doctrine on contraceptives need to be re-evaluated and see if there is a way that there could be some exceptions in certain situations. And I think that is fair. And I think that is something that, if the church chooses to do, because, law is usually not black and white, especially when it comes to life. There has to be that leeway whereby you can still, support life while looking at the law and maybe adjusting if necessary.
Yeah, and there was also the issue of child abuse in the Catholic Church, which, came up time and again under Pope Francis. It took him a while to acknowledge the existence of that, which was hurtful for some of the victims. What did you make of his response to this?
I know the media went, crazy with that in terms of timeline and when he responds or, how he responded to it. I will tell you this, I don't have the facts on it, but what I know is that the Catholic Church preserves and also takes care of all human beings, especially the children and the vulnerable. And I know that today in the Catholic Church, there is zero tolerance for child abuse of any form or any sort. But I don't have, unfortunately, I don't have, more information on that. But eventually, and I think the Pope came around. I think the controversy or maybe the criticism was on the timing. But eventually, he embraced that and he did the right thing in terms of protecting the rights of children and the vulnerable.
So Pope Francis, interestingly, was a very modern pope. Interestingly, he was faced with many of the challenges that are facing any other world leader today. For the next pope, how would you suggest, if you have the opportunity, they navigate some of these challenges? For example, the issue of homosexuals becoming priests. We're still talking child abuse in the church. And then, modern challenges today. There are very many issues that, the Church of Christ does face. and even, a Trump administration that's seemingly gone haywire on the rest of the world?
Well, I pray that our next pontiff will be in touch with the people, knowing the people's needs, knowing the people's sufferings, knowing what is needed to preserve life and to promote life. And so far, we have been very lucky and to have people who have done that. In terms of, homosexuals, and I think he will also look at them. And I personally, I believe that every creature is made in God's image. And I will treat everyone that way while maintaining the doctrines of the Catholic Church. It's a balance. We need to know how to navigate both. And I also pray that our next pontiff will definitely, as a leader of the world, even though he's not just a leader of the Catholic Church, to look into what is going on. Yes, the world is in disarray. You mentioned United States, yes, but also Nigeria and a lot of other countries in the world. And I'm hoping that it will be somebody who will definitely speak to the leaders of the world, because the leaders of the world listen to Pope. They listen to, the injunctions of the Pope. They listen to the advice of the Pope, even if, they implement it or not. But I will pray that it's someone who will be a people's person, a shepherd, not just for Catholics, but for the whole world.
Sister Bellamine, how are you honoring the memories of Pope Francis, as we move gradually towards Saturday?
I have been reading up on his life, and one of his memories or his legacies that I intend to hold on for a very long time is his simplicity of life. His simplicity and his love for people. He loves, and his love knew no bounds. That is something that, and the Franciscan, apostolate and the Franciscan philosophy of, preach the gospel with your deeds more than your words. And I'm hoping that the kind of love and the kind of hope that he really shared with the world, that I will strive to do that in my own little way, where I live, where I serve, and where life finds me. So that is something that I want to hold on for the rest of my life. He really inspired me, and not just me, but many people.
Sister Bellamine Izuma, it's been a real pleasure. We appreciate your coming on the show today to talk about Pope Francis. A huge loss it is to the rest of the world. Thank you again for being on the program.
Thank you very much. May he rest in peace. Amen.
Amen. So other global issues. Now the Deputy Regional Humanitarian Coordinator for the Syria crisis, David Carden, says now is the time to invest in Syria, as the country is in a pivotal stage of transition to help shape the most self-reliant future for its people and to support safe and dignified return. Well, he was briefing reporters on the humanitarian situation in Syria via video link. He highlighted that the UN and its partners are doing whatever they can with the resources available, expressing deep alarm by the lack of funding, which he says has led already to the suspension of water and sanitation services in camps.
Now, times have changed. Today we have a new Syria, one that's brimming with hope and opportunity. But while the levels of conflict have subsided in many parts of the country, the humanitarian crisis in Syria is far from over. More than 16 million people today are in need of aid. That is 7 out of every 10 Syrians, the majority of whom are women and children. Over 40% of the needs are concentrated in Idlib and Aleppo. And whilst we have seen a gradual increase in returnees this year, Syria does remain one of the world's largest displacement crises, with 7 million people displaced. So the UN and its partners are doing what they can with the resources available. But we're deeply alarmed by the lack of funding, which has already led to the suspension of water and sanitation services in camps, safe spaces for women and girls, and other humanitarian activities across Syria. And to date, the humanitarian community has secured $179 million, less than 9% of the $2 billion needed to help the most vulnerable until the end of June this year. So this is the time to invest in Syria, as the country is in a pivotal stage of transition, to help shape a more self-reliant future for its people, and to support safe and dignified returns. We sincerely hope that the humanitarian phase will be as short as possible, so we can move towards recovery and reconstruction, and in that context, see the further easing of sanctions. With the discontinuation of my post, I hope that this also reflects Syria's trajectory towards a brighter and more stable future. The most vulnerable people in Syria deserve no less, and I wish them all the very best.
Staying with the UN, the special representative for the Secretary General for Haiti, Maria Isabel Salvador, has told the Security Council all member states must increase support to Haiti's security forces, including the multinational security support mission, not as a matter of choice, but of necessity, as no viable alternative remains. Since her last briefing, Ms. Salvador says the security situation in Haiti has further deteriorated.
Stepping up international support for Haiti is more critical than ever, particularly through increased funding and operational capacity for the multinational security support mission. I commend Kenya's steadfast leadership and thank all contributing member states. But at this critical juncture, all member states must increase support to Haiti's security forces, particularly the multinational security support mission, not as a matter of choice, but of necessity, as no viable alternative remains. Haiti's humanitarian crisis has reached critical levels. Cholera outbreaks and gender-based violence, especially in displacement sites, are widespread. Insecurity has closed 39 health facilities and over 900 schools in Port-au-Prince. I urge member states to support the 2025 humanitarian response plan. The UN remains committed to helping deliver life-saving assistance, especially to women, girls, and children, and to promoting social peace through government-led efforts.
The MSS has the right mandate. The MSS has the right officers with the right competences, and there is the political leadership is keen to restore security. What the mission needs is to be fully deployed and adequately enabled. An urgent expansion of the MSS personnel is therefore essential in order to deliver the intended impact and meet the legitimate high expectations of the Haitian people.
We, Denmark, Greece, Guyana, Panama, the Republic of Korea, Sierra Leone, Slovenia, the United Kingdom, and my own country, France, also signatories of the shared commitments on women, peace and security, express our unwavering support for all the women and girls of Haiti. The unprecedented levels of violence across the country, notably gang violence, threatens peace and security and the stability of the Transitional Presidential Council.
In another development, the IMF says the U.S. is forecast to be hit the hardest among advanced economies because of its uncertainty caused by tariffs in the country. Growth is now expected to be 1.8% this year, down from the IMF's estimate of 2.7% for the U.S. in January. Meanwhile, the U.S. markets are rebounding following their losses on Monday. Markets have been rattled by Donald Trump's attack on the U.S. Central Bank boss, Jerome Powell. He called him a major loser for not cutting interest rates. But staying in the U.S., Harvard University has filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, claiming its freezing of federal grants worth billions of dollars is unlawful. Its president, Alan Garber, announced the action on Monday in a letter to the university community, which said the $2 billion funding freeze would hamper critical disease research. Harvard, the world's richest university, last week rejected a list of demands that the Trump administration said was designed to curb diversity initiatives and fight anti-Semitism at the school. In response to the lawsuit, the White House said the gravy train of federal assistance was coming to an end. Funding cuts have also been implemented at other elite universities, and a new government anti-Semitism task force has identified at least 60 universities for review. President Trump has accused universities of failing to protect Jewish students during last year's campus protests against the war in Gaza and U.S. support for Israel. Meanwhile, a senior Palestinian official familiar with the Israel-Hamas ceasefire negotiations has told the BBC the Qatari and Egyptian mediators have proposed a new formula to end the war in Gaza. This official says it envisages a truce lasting between 5 and 7 years, the release of all Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails, a formal end to the war, and a complete Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. A senior Hamas delegation was due to arrive in Cairo for consultations, and the last ceasefire collapsed a month ago when Israel resumed bombing Gaza, with both sides blaming each other for the failure to keep it going. Israel has not commented on the mediators' plan. However, 26 Palestinians were killed, 60 others injured by Israeli airstrikes across the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. Local residents and eyewitnesses described the airstrikes as extremely intense. One of them said the attacks destroyed dozens of bulldozers and heavy machinery, equipment used by Hamas-run municipalities to reopen roads, clear rubble, and rescue victims trapped beneath the debris. Over in Israel, arrests have been made as thousands of demonstrators flooded Tel Aviv on Monday, calling for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to step down amid the ongoing war in Gaza and political turmoil. Crowds waved placards, chanted slogans, and clashed with police officers while they were trying to be detained. One protester echoed a growing public frustration, saying that they're afraid of the government, which is why they're there, and they will continue with the protest. They will continue to block the country and will continue to take the streets. Israel responded with a large-scale military campaign of airstrikes and ground incursions following that attack by Hamas on October 7, 2023. Over 51,000 Palestinians have died, more than 116,000 others injured at a time of the publication from the Gaza Health Ministry. The IDF's military operations resumed the enclave at dawn of Tuesday, March 18, after the collapse of a temporary Israel-Hamas ceasefire that had facilitated exchange of prisoners and hostages between the two sides.
First of all, we're not going out tonight. We're going out for the last year and a half. And every day it seems that there's more and more to go out to protest against. And today it was more, there's always more red line or bottom line that's going down and down with democracy, with hypocrisy of Netanyahu. So people got enough, and we had enough, but apparently we need to go more because the situation is not improving, I would say, until now.
A Palestinian man died on Monday after inhaling tear gas during an Israeli military raid on the town of Sinjil, north of Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. The raid was part of Israel's ongoing military campaign in the territory known as Operation Iron Wall. According to witnesses, the 48-year-old Wael Bassam Gafri succumbed to gas inhalation after Israeli forces protecting settlers fired tear gas as settlers attacked an area of land separating Sinjil from the nearby town of Al-Mazra, Ash-Sharkiya. Those settlers also reportedly set fire to a house. The agency said a violent confrontation broke out between residents and the Israeli army, who opened live fire at Palestinians with support from armed settlers. While no injuries from the gunfire were reported, dozens of Palestinians suffered from severe tear gas explosion. In a separate incident, a farm owner suffered a heart attack after being physically assaulted, sprayed with tear gas, and struck in the face by Israeli settlers. The settlers also torched the farm, destroyed a workshop under construction, stole 45 sheep, killed several more, and burned 3 livestock barracks. To Europe now, where President Vladimir Putin signaled he was open to talks with Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky for the first time since the early stages of the war. But Russian strikes is still continuing after his comments. Speaking to Russian state TV on Monday, the Russian President Vladimir Putin said Russia had always looked positively on any peace initiatives, hoping that representatives of the Kyiv regime would feel the same way. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Putin's comments indicate a willingness to engage in direct talks with Ukraine about not striking civilian targets. However, Russian attacks on Ukrainian cities continued today with a wave of strikes across the country. A strike on an apartment block in Zaporizhia killed 1 woman and injured 20 others, including 4 children. In Kharkiv, in the country's east, authorities said a massive drone attack this morning during the daytime injured at least 7 people. President Volodymyr Zelensky has said there's been no strikes in Odessa, in Sumy, in Donetsk and other southern regions, while Ukrainian media are reporting a strike in southeast Kherson. Monday night, strike on Odessa had targeted a 5-story unit block and injured 3 people. And the Japanese embassy in China reported that China has executed a man for fatally stabbing a 10-year-old Japanese boy last September. Zhong Chongchun was sentenced to death in January for attacking the boy who'd been walking to a Japanese school in the southeastern Chinese city of Shenzhen. The case had sent shockwaves through both countries and fueled diplomatic tensions amid allegations of it being a xenophobic attack. The Japanese embassy said in a statement the government of Japan considers the murder a completely unforgivable crime, and they take the execution with the utmost solemnity. Here in Africa, 2 of South Africa's major political parties, the Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters, have taken legal action to halt the proposed VAT increase set for May 1st, 2025. The matter is being heard in the Western Cape High Court today. A timing of the hike, coinciding with Workers' Day, has added fuel to the debate. Now, as anticipated by experts, parts of the 2025 budget are now facing legal challenges. The DA and the EFF argue that the VAT increase is unlawful and will place additional strain on the economy, particularly on vulnerable South African households reliant on the SASSA grants.
South Africa, today we stand here at the High Court in Cape Town and we say no more taxes on the poor, the working class and even the middle class. VAT is a regressive tax. It is more pain onto the people, the poor and the working class in South Africa. A VAT increase is a clear sign that the ANC is a government that does not care for South Africans. A VAT increase is a sign that we have a government that is out of touch with the people.
Now, colleagues, today's fight is very simple and clear, one that resonates with all South Africans. Nobody has money to pay more for food. Nobody has money to pay more for baby formula, for school shoes and basic living. And our fight today in this court that will be heard is one that says we want an urgent interdict as a matter of urgency against a VAT hike.
And here in Lagos, the state government has announced the speed limit implementation is not for revenue purposes, but to ensure public safety and data capturing. This was disclosed by the State Commissioner for Transportation, Mr. Oluwaseun Oshiemi, at the Lagos State 2025 ministerial briefing organized by the government to reel out achievements of the state governor in the last 1 year. He says the Lagos speed limit is backed by Section 28(2)(a) of the Lagos State Transport Sector Reform 2028 law, and the speed cameras are currently operational on Alapere Road and Mobolaji Bank Anthony Way, and anyone caught will be fined.
The speed limit sign 1 was created not because of revenue generation. I would like to correct that. It's strictly for public safety to everyone on the road. Why do we have it? We've seen a lot of accidents over the years, and the only way we can do that is 1, ensure that we put street limits on our roads. 1, for safety. 2, the cameras that we use, they are AI cameras. They also help us in getting data of the number of vehicles that ply a particular route online real time, which would enable us to plan against infrastructure, routing of buses or public transport into that zone. It has a lot that it does. And beyond that, it also would capture infractions such as lane indiscipline. What do I mean by lane indiscipline? You are going straight. You want to turn off at, say, Nitel or Mobolaji Bank Anthony Way. Rather than staying on the last lane that will take you to turn off, you go on the right, trying to be fast, and you get to that junction, the light has not passed you. Now you have created 2 free lanes as against 1 lane that should be. So those going all the way to Sheraton, you are blocking them. That light will capture you. We have those ones on Allen and Olowopopo, where we have the speed limit cameras as we speak today, and I want people to please note. 1, Mobolaji Bank Anthony Road, Alapere. The one on Mobolaji Bank Anthony is 60 kilometers per hour. The one on Alapere is 80 kilometers per hour. And then thirdly is on Third Mainland Bridge. We've done an upgrade from the 80 to 100. It's going to be 100 kilometers per hour. The cameras are there and they will pick you. They are AM/PR cameras. We have footages, we have videos that we can review and send to you if you do contest those violations.
We're going back out of Nigeria now, as the UN Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez says the difficulties facing indigenous people around the world are an affront to dignity and justice. He was addressing the opening of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Peoples. Mr. Gutierrez urged governments and institutions to ensure that the leadership, rights and needs of indigenous peoples are recognized and acted upon across the board.
The difficulties facing indigenous peoples around the world are an affront to dignity and justice, and a source of deep sorrow for me personally. I urge governments and institutions to ensure that the leadership, rights and needs of indigenous peoples are recognized and acted upon across the board. In a world in flux, it is particularly important that governments are alert to the impacts on indigenous peoples, and governments must honor their obligations in the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples without delay. The individual and collective rights of indigenous peoples are non-negotiable. Now and forever, we stand with you all. Now and forever, we stand with you all in making those rights a reality for indigenous peoples everywhere.
We want to unapologetically thrive as indigenous peoples. That is why it is so crucially and personally important to indigenous peoples that the universal framework to protect the rights, dignity, and well-being of indigenous peoples worldwide be fully implemented. We are not anti-development, but development must be on our terms and must be just. It must respect our forms of self-governance, uphold environmental safeguards, and include equitable benefit-sharing mechanisms. We have come far, but the road ahead remains long. UNDRIP is not a document to be celebrated once a year. It is a living framework that must guide how we govern, how we invest, and how we treat one another on the shared Mother Earth. Its full and effective implementation is not optional. It is a moral, legal, and collective obligation.
Right, we're here, aren't we? The 4th edition of the Electric Vehicle Innovation Summit, IVIS Abu Dhabi 2025. This kicked off on Monday. We're looking at companies demonstrating their very latest technological advances with a range of IVIS on display. In his opening address, the Undersecretary for Energy and Petroleum Affairs at the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure in Abu Dhabi, Sharif Al-Olama, highlighted the UAE ranked first in the Middle East in 2024 for the highest share of electric and hybrid vehicle sales out of total car sales. And this program brings together industry experts, policymakers, and companies addressing mobility, energy, and sustainability.
Here, it's IVIS in Abu Dhabi 2025. We have our flying car, it's called the X2. It's a car that actually drives on its own. It can drive for 45 minutes in one charge with a speed of 247 kilometers per hour. This is expanding, this is the future. We have our flying cars. This is going to be the flying taxi in Dubai 2026. And also we do have the normal cars over there.
We're here to present our innovation, which is efficient electronic architecture. So our company makes real-time control systems, which is, we've got a small model of it here, and we've got the larger model right here. The whole system is made up of numerous blocks which go all around the vehicle and control the system in real time. The main, so we're focused on efficiency. We're able to decrease the number of copper wires by 90% in a passenger car and increase the efficiency of the vehicle by 85% of an e-vehicle by 85%. So that means it can double the range, almost double the range in this case. And this comes down to the efficiency of electronic communication between the nodes.
Wish we'd gotten a closer look of that flying car, right? Because it is the future. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Archie.